Ooh, 3x divine. That's pretty good. This is like this. Why did that say apothecary on the map? Oh my god, Hitakora's lock on our first one? What is up, YouTube? I am here today to talk to you guys about the next level of Blight strategy. Yesterday, I posted a video on the blue Blight strategy, which is kind of like the budget version of Blight. You farm with a lot of gold, and you also farm a good amount of currency. But today, I'm going to show you guys how to do like more juiced Blight, which is going to be a little bit harder to run. I guess like the most important thing to talk about here is like the gear requirements that you're actually going to need in order to run these juiced Blights. I personally have around a mirror invested in my gear. First of all, I'm going in stacking CI, Wander with Deadeye. There's a lot of stuff on here that's just like nice to have, but you don't really need. Like the Simplex, for example, is not needed. It's like a 5% damage boost compared to, what is it called? Like the Great Wolf Talisman or something like that. It's a very marginal increase. I'm running a pretty budget wand. I'm running a Mage Blood, which is also not necessary. This is just like quality of life stuff. I just like playing with the Mage Blood because like, look how fast I run. As a PoE 2 player, I'm fucking, look at me. I'm Peepo running, right? That's just really nice to have. And it doesn't really give my build that much power. It's not build enabling. Like I'm not running like triple res flash or anything like that. I would say like a mirror budget is fair. I have some quality of life jewels as well. Like I have a Forbidden Flesh and Flame that gives me Unbound Avatar, which I forget to use 90% of the time. So I would say a mirror budget roughly. If you're curious on the DPS, I think I'm 5.5 mil DPS per projectile on KB, and I have like 5 or 6 projectiles, but it's hard to actually determine KB DPS just because it's kind of unreliable to get all 5 of your projectiles onto a monster or anything like that. But that's just kind of like the rough estimates for like how much my character is worth and how much DPS I provide. One really important thing is, of course, DPS is really important, but because of the ring annoyance I have here, the chilling towers freeze enemies for 2.2 seconds, kind of makes DPS not as important anymore, because if you have your maps rolled correctly, then you're going to be in a situation where the unique monsters will not be able to progress past a certain point. And if you set up your towers properly as well, it's pretty much impossible to fail a Blight unless you die. And that's kind of why I focused heavily on making sure I have a shit ton of ES. I have 20k ES, and I'm still dying. I'm gonna keep it real with you. This is like probably the most juiced, most difficult content in the game. I am definitely still dying. I haven't lost a map yet, but I definitely will die 2 or 3 times a map just by like not being careful. There are a lot of monsters that are incredibly dangerous. On top of that, I'm running a Ruby Flask. This is just because the only monsters that are really that scary, fire damaging monsters. So increasing your fire res is very nice. Let me get out of here because this guy will not shut up. So the next thing I guess we can talk about is the Scarabs. The Scarabs are pretty similar to the last video. The primary difference is we are going to be taking Blooming instead of the Horned Scarab of Bloodlines, increased unique bosses, and also make them more difficult. Besides that, we're still going to be going one Risk Scarab. We're going to be going Invig. We're going to be going Blightheart. Invig and Blightheart, these are pretty much necessary for any Blight strategy you're going to be running. And then on top of that, we're going to be getting Wisps. Wisps are going to be like a Scarab that's kind of hard to quantify because there's a certain RNG element involved into it. And also the calculation for how valuable Wisps aren't very clear cut. But essentially, Wisps are the only way in the game to increase the value of your currency drops. Kind of like PoE 2, where like, you know, having higher rarity increases the value of the rarity of the currency you drop. Wisps does that in PoE 1 in like a pseudo way, in the sense that having blue Wisp onto your monsters actually increases the odds that you drop locks and mirrors. I think that's the only way to do so in the entirety of PoE 1. The exact numbers aren't very clear cut, but the purple juice gives you more unique equipment drops. The yellow Wisp gives you more quant, and the blue Wisps give you more currency. And the blue Wisps are kind of how you are going to get more locks and mirrors, that kind of stuff. You almost never want to run 2 of these. I think there's diminishing returns pretty significantly on the juice. I'm pretty sure 1 Risk, 1 Wisps is pretty much like this. I think there's an argument to be made now though, that you can run, instead of running Risk, you can run Titanic or something like that too. But that's kind of like more min-maxy stuff and makes it a lot more difficult too. That's kind of like the highest level of juice you can possibly run in this game. But for this is like very, very doable, I guess, for our build. But I think with Titanic, which is what we're going to be testing later today, that might be a little bit more juice, but at the same time, it'll be a lot more difficult. Anyways, this is our Scarab setup. The Atlas setup is pretty much the same as our previous Atlas setup. The only difference is we are now going for Blight Spawn, because this essentially gives you an entire lane filled with unique monsters. And if you don't know, in Path of Exile in both games, normal monsters drop almost no loot. Magic monsters drop very, very little loot. Rare monsters are just like the loot bananas. It's the same in PoE 2. But unique monsters are even more valuable than rares. They have inherent item quantity and item rarity modifiers to the monsters themselves, which then work multiplicatively with your own personal item rarity, item quantity, whatever. So this just allows you to get a ton of unique monsters in your Blight. But the problem is these unique monsters are getting empowered by your Invigoration and Power turrets, and they become incredibly tanky and also they just one-shot you. There's no other way to describe it. Like, no matter how much defenses you have, these guys are probably still going to one-shot you to a certain degree if you play it poorly, but there's stuff you can do to avoid that. The ore nodes, the settlers ore nodes for the bismuths, because bismuth is just really good juice on our maps. And then on top of that, we're just going all of the really good blight nodes here. We need to get a guaranteed 100% chance to get blight without scarabs. And then also this just gives you more damage to the blight monsters and also gives your pump a little bit more durability. And then we just take all of the other really just classic, really good nodes. Rice Hat, Hokage, setup, more scarabs. I do go for some blocks here. We're going red altars because we are CI, Mage Blood. If you prefer blue altars for whatever reason, like find the mods easier to run, go for blue altars. But currently, embers are also worth a lot more than icores. So another good reason to go red altars. And I also think they're a lot more consistent. But that's the tree. It's very, very straightforward. I'll probably link this in the description as well. The Atlas Planner if you want to follow along in a more simplistic way. But yeah, that is pretty much the whole setup. Why don't I run a map with you guys to show you? They are quite difficult to do. So I will probably die here at least once or twice. Don't make fun of me. Oh, I guess we can talk about the maps here as well. So I kind of griefed it. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to currency chisel the maps, the tier 16.5 Dunes map, and you're going to want to split them. Because these are going to cost you around 30C. The actual 16.5 is going to cost you like 25C. Split piece is like 8C. So you'll end up making like 50C per split. It's just very, very worth it to do. And then we're also going to add a deli to the map. So yeah, this is what we're going to look for. I'll link the regex for how I roll my maps in the description. But essentially, we're just going for incredibly high currency or good currency with a combination of scarabs or maps, that kind of thing. But something like this is pretty standard, like 300% currency with the chisels. We're just going to put this in the map right now. And we are going to always run settlers because this just gives us a higher chance of getting bismuth, which will juice our map pretty nicely. If you do use my regex, it'll be really straightforward. So if I come here, I'll link this in the description, this Google Doc, but you just come down to the Giga Blight setup here, and you're going to see the scarabs here. You're going to see the regex here. This first part is just the mods that I cannot run. And the second part is going to be my regex for currency / scarabs, like the combination of all that stuff. What you're going to want to do is you just want to get rid of this first part and then input your own based off of like what mods you feel like you can or cannot run. The only important part to consider is that there are pretty much just two mods that you never want to run on Blight. And that is going to be these stun / freeze immunity mods, which just make it so your defensive towers don't do anything to the monsters and they will just absolutely overrun you, as you will see in a second. So all you really want to do is just add whichever mods you want to the regex, copy this, you remove this part of the regex, and then you paste that in. So that just changes which mods you don't want, and then you still have the second part of the regex, which is the most important part. In case you didn't know, I just include that part in, but without further ado, let me show you what the actual map looks like. So like before, every single time we are just going to be rushing the boss. If we see Cassia, we'll drop a portal here because we are going to die most likely in the maps. That's okay though. But we want to make it so if we die, we can just come like right back into the Blight, no problem. But we kill the boss pretty much just so we can influence the altars a little bit better. And we just get the good altars that we want to see, which are going to be these quant altars. And maybe something like, yeah, another quant altar with some rarity. But we also care about duping currency, duping scarabs, duping maps, duping div cards, that kind of stuff. Those are all valuable things to get. Fortress map, nice. You're going to be dropping a shit ton of maps doing the strategy as well without even juicing for maps. So that's another really good part of the strategy. And yeah, you just kind of like, I just go up and down, clear. I'm like a fucking Roomba. We have really good clear on this build. So we just come through here. Hoover it all up. I personally skip these defense breaches. They drop like no loot at all. If you need the blood, you can go for it, but I'm just gonna skip it. I don't really like doing them. I'm always so disappointed by the amount of loot that we get. And yeah, I say fuck them. And they don't even guarantee you a womb anyway, so whatever. Oh, almost just died there. Trying to open the mist. Okay, so our altars aren't great. And also we didn't get a bismuth, so this is not like super juiced by any means. Not the ideal situation for where we want to be, but I think it should be fine. I think it'll still be a good showcase for, you know, what the loot is going to look like, even on like a lower end, not super turbo juiced map. I usually like to get the monster count to below 50 just to make sure we get all of the altar spawns that we, or I would say like 90% of the altar spawns that we can. But yeah, where are them? Oh, here they are. Okay, good enough. And then now we can just start the Blight. Check the petals. The petals aren't great. Oh, the petals are great. Drop items that can't... So these petals affect monsters not be able to drop items that can have rarity, so no equipment loot, which means more currency loot. So that's actually pretty solid. And we have a 6 pump right here, which means we're going to have a medium-sized amount of monsters. But what you can do here is if you open your market tab, you can actually do your towers like this. I highly recommend you do this because you are going to die a lot setting up your towers if you don't. Which is very convenient. It makes the tower setup process of this Blight like a billion times easier. So we're going to want to set up these Empower Tower 3s, and we specifically go to Empower 3 because if you look here, our Helical Ring, one of them is obviously anointed with the Chilling Towers for defenses, and as you're going to see in a little bit, we are not going to have the DPS to just insta-kill all the uniques, but with the Chilling Tower in conjunction with the Stun Tower, the uniques will still be getting perma-stunned. In a way, this makes it so we can never fail a Blight. And then this makes it so the Empower Towers have increased range. The more overlaps are just more loot. This only affects the level 3 green towers though. So you don't want to have too many level 4 towers. You can still have level 4 towers. It's just you don't want too many of them because you'll have less overlaps. That's all. But yeah, just this, setting up Empower Towers as many as we can get realistically. So one thing I like to do as well is if you see right here, this is going to be like our kill zone. Right here is where you have all the overlaps. So I like to set up a freeze tower here because this way the mobs can't really make it past this 5 or 6x overlap. And although we lose 1 Empower Tower of overlap, we just guarantee like 6 every single time. So it's a little bit more consistent. And then we come over here. So we're going to want to do something like this. Freeze tower. Freeze tower, stun tower, and then a bunch of empowers here. So this is going to be our kill zone as well. And as you can... And as you see, like, the monsters, they just can't move. There's just nothing they can do. It's too much CC for them. And what I'll do is in the kill zone, I'll set up 1 smothering tower here. The unique monsters take a little bit more damage. And they're already in the radius of this tower, so losing the 25% in power does not matter. Ooh. Careful there. Set up the empowers. Yeah, very, very nice. And then over here, it's the same thing. This is the kill zone here. Kill zone here. We are good. It is impossible for us to fuck up this Blight now. Now, that's actually true. There's one monster which is going to be this fucking goat guy who just jumps up and around. He can actually make it past these somehow. Oh, like right here. He's just hopping. He's the one that guy who can make it through this double tower setup here, but stop almost every other mob. So that is the benefit of having these 2 towers with the anoint, and the map gets rippy. I'm going to die probably like 2 times per map. That's totally acceptable with me. We just set up our map, our portal right next to the Blight, so that way we can just get right back into the fight. One thing is you probably don't want to set up your portal next to the pump like I did. That's kind of a grief because there are some mobs that can teleport onto you. And if they teleport onto you when you spawn and you're next to the portal, they will just one-shot your portal. It's not great, but those are just some things that I've noticed as well. But for the most part, right here, if we have a little bit less damage, it'll be a little bit more rippy and stuff, but they should not be able to make it past this double tower setup. And then even sometimes I'll throw on a cage tower behind these 2 defensive towers, just because I'm KB and the cages will make it so that the monsters all get shotgunned by my KB projectiles. And they just Giga bounce inside the cage and I can just one-shot mobs. But you don't have to do that if you're not KB, although I'm not really sure what builds can run this that aren't KB. The explodey builds are very nice, but at the same time, the explosions with all the monsters on the map will just absolutely Windows 97 your PC and just shut that shit down off the rip. So that is one thing to consider. And then over here, we have another kill zone. Let's just set up a smothering tower, make sure everything is good to go. And as you see, it's not like, it's obviously rippy as fuck. It's obviously rippy as fuck, but at the same time, in a world where like Havoc or Ben is on my computer, they'll never die. Your towers will pretty much perma stun lock the unique monsters, and if you just dodge the projectiles, you will never die. I am a noob though, so I die all the time. I would say this is standard loot. Like as I showed you guys earlier, we only had like, I think 3 altars that did anything, and we didn't get bismuth, and this is only a 6 blight. So this is what I would consider to be pretty standard loot here. And you're probably going to be getting a tink on average. The best way to determine how juicy your loot is actually not looking at how many divs you get per map, because that has a lot of variance, but looking at the chaos orbs that you're dropping. I think it's supposed to be like 1 div per 17 chaos or something like that. So as you can see here, we dropped 23 chaos. Means we're kind of like overdue for a div. We got a little unlucky here, but that's the idea. And even if you don't get a div, you're going to be dropping a lot of tinks from like Scarabs, and also you're going to be dropping a good amount of tier 17s. The most consistent part of the strategy is all the bubblegum currency you're getting. Like we're getting 20 chaos here, we're getting an Eldritch Annulment, 5 greater, you know, all this stuff will easily add up to a div in terms of just bubblegum shitter loot that we're picking up. It is incredibly nice to see. The Dunes maps you can sell for 1C each as well. Most of the time you are going to be getting at least 1 tink on top of it. Domination Scarab of Terrors, I'm not sure how much that's worth, if that's a div or not, but it all adds up and you will be getting a shit ton of loot. Another thing to notice is you're just killing so many mobs, so you will be seeing a bunch of uniques, and as a result, you'll be seeing a bunch of tier 0 uniques as well. I think I farmed like 4 Mage Bloods last league just doing Blight. Oh, there's our tink. There we go. And these little hordes are very nice as well. You're probably gonna be making like 20 to 30 C just off the hordes. They just drop a lot of loot. And yeah, that's pretty much all there really is to it. Little extra mini game here. This is like doing the Abyss hordes back when Abyss was doable. But yeah, I think this is like the most fun strat. Seeing that loot explosion at the end of every map feels really good, and you're also juicing your map pretty well. So the rest of the map is also going to have a good amount of loot on it. Let me talk to you a little bit about the profit and losses, like the cost for everything. It was only costing us like 5C to Alxgour maps. If you're splitting your maps with the chisels, it's only 44C total per map. It's really, really cheap. Unfortunately, the Invigs, the Bloomings, the Risks, these are kind of expensive Scarabs. So it's going to bring us to around like 111C cost for Scarabs, which is like 155C cost per map, which is a little bit over a div. So 50 maps, it was roughly, I think, 60 div for 50 maps. This was kind of like what the returns were. We got 75 div in raw currency. We had 25 div drops, 19 volo drops, pretty much 1 tink per map. And another thing to consider is in these 50 maps, the last 10 of my maps were all like 5 pumps. So this is actually kind of a skewed sample size conservatively, which is fine, but I just figured I'd point that out. And then we made another 30 div in just bubblegum currency. Like I said, we were making so much bubblegum currency per map, like the random ass exalts, random ass chaos orbs, eldritch currency, all that kind of stuff. And as well as all the embers that we were picking up. They really add up to around like 40% of our currency drops. On top of that, we made 75 div in other drops. So that's fragments, maps, all that kind of stuff. I think we dropped 36 fortress maps, which is like 20 div and just fortresses. It's very, very nice. And then we conservatively round this down to around 150 div. One thing to consider is I dropped a lock and an apothecary, but I don't know how to actually price this. So I'll kind of give you my analysis excluding these big ticket drops, and then I'll give you my analysis including them and my thought process on how much of them we should include at the end. But all of this makes it so we were making around 3 div per map, excluding jackpots, which means that we profited 90 div across 50 maps, and we were able to run 8.5 maps an hour. This number is, I would say, a little bit skewed. You could probably get closer to 9 or 10. I'm a streamer, so like I was reading chat, doing that kind of stuff, dying a lot for content. I never die on purpose. This was my time. You could definitely get higher than this, or even lower than this if your gear is slightly worse than mine. But this brought us to a 15 div per hour number. Now, the thing to consider is whether or not we include this jackpot. If we do include the expected value of getting 1 jackpot, so either the apothecary or the lock, not both, in the 50 map run, it brings us closer to 21 div an hour, or I would just say conservatively 20 div an hour, which I think is a lot more fair. In most strategies that I run, I don't include like the jackpot, the chance for getting locks, mirrors, that kind of stuff into the calculation at all, just because the odds of getting them are so small that it's not really worth including. But for this strategy specifically, I mean, we are running the Wisp Scarabs. We are seeing a crazy amount of currency drops, including the like jackpot, mirror, lock, apothecary, like the mage bloods, headhunters, that kind of stuff into the drop chance, into the drop pool calculation. Actually does make a lot of sense. And this is concurrent with the data that I tested from last league, in which I ran like 200 or 300 of these blights, and I was getting 1 jackpot of like mage blood, apothecary, headhunter, lock, that kind of thing. One of those every single 25 runs. Now, last league, we essentially had roughly double the amount of quantity, the amount of drops that we were getting compared to this league. So it actually kind of falls in line with you're seeing one of these jackpots every 50 or so maps this league. You could argue that's one in every 60, one in every 70, something like that. But I really do think for this specific strategy, it does make sense to include the expected value of dropping a lock, of dropping Mage Blood, Apothecary, Headhunter, that kind of stuff. Anyways, that's kind of like my analysis. I personally think you should include some sort of expected value for the jackpot drops. I put like a 80% multiplier on it. So it's like 20 div an hour. If you don't want to do that, if you think that's like bullshit or it's unfair, I gave you this calculation as well, but this is personally what I believe the actual expected returns across 50 maps, 100 maps for this Blight strategy is going to be. But ultimately, this is my analysis, and it's up to you to kind of decide between 15 div or 20 div an hour for the strategy. Anyways, that is pretty much it for the video. I hope this was beneficial for you. I hope you guys are strong enough and are able to try the strategy out. If you do, I wish you the best of luck. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys like the video, please like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And I hope to see you guys again in the next one.